The year is 1996, and without warning, the skies across the globe go dark. Massive, city-sized alien vessels arrive in orbit, hovering ominously over major metropolitan centers like New York, Los Angeles, and Washington, D.C. As global communication networks flicker and die, the world is thrust into a state of bewilderment that quickly turns to absolute apocalyptic panic. At the center of this gathering storm, three unlikely individuals, a brilliant but frustrated satellite technician, a cocky marine fighter pilot, and the President of the United States, find themselves racing against a ticking clock as the invaders begin their coordinated strike to dismantle human civilization. These scattered survivors must piece together the truth behind the visitors' arrival and formulate a desperate, last-ditch counterattack. Welcome to Retropocalypse, the archive where we dig through the cinematic wreckage of the past to find the signals that still resonate today. Whether you're a fan of the 90s blockbusters or just someone who appreciates a deep dive into the practical craftsmanship and cultural impact of the films that defined a generation, you found the right transmission. I'm Chris, and we're here to keep the history of our favorite films alive. Most of you have likely seen Independence Day. It's been a staple of summer television and streaming rotations for 30 years now. But if you're one of the few who hasn't yet witnessed the chaos, be warned. We'll be diving deep into the film's production and legacy, so this might be a spoiler alert. We'll do our best to keep to the plot points focused on the buildup, but there's no way to analyze the story without eventually touching on the pyrotechnics of the finale. The movie was met with mostly positive feedback from critics and audiences. This was largely driven by its spectacular action sequences and groundbreaking visual effects, which pushed the boundaries of what could be done with practical models. The production was filled with unique, behind-the-scenes occurrences that have since become legendary. According to director Dean Devlin, the line originally scripted for the moment Captain Stephen Hiller punches the alien was, "Now that's what I call a close encounter." But Will Smith ad-libbed "Welcome to Earth" instead. Director Roland Emmerich was so impressed with the delivery that he decided to keep it in the film, adding a layer of spontaneous, authentic personality to the character. The creative engine behind Independence Day was the powerhouse collaboration between German director Roland Emmerich and his American writing and producing partner, Dean Devlin. Their partnership was born out of serendipity on the set of Emmerich's 1990 sci-fi film Moon 44, where Devlin, then an actor, began assisting Emmerich with script rewrites to overcome language barriers. Roland Emmerich was born in Stuttgart, Germany in 1955, and originally intended to study production design before being inspired by Star Wars and switching his focus to directing. Sometimes known as the master of disaster, Emmerich brought an unmatched visual ambition to his projects, often storyboarding entire films himself while Devlin focused on the narrative structure. Dean Devlin was born in New York City in 1962 to a producer-actor father and an actress mother. He brought his own experience as a former teen actor, which helped him effectively bridge the gap between technical production and performance. Together they founded Centropolis Entertainment and developed a unique workflow, sitting at opposite ends of a table. Emmerich would draw the scenes while Devlin wrote them, often churning out a full script in as little as 4 weeks. Their partnership spanned iconic hits like Stargate, Independence Day, and Godzilla, before they temporarily parted ways after 2000's The Patriot. Emmerich continued his career as a blockbuster director with notable films like The Day After Tomorrow, 2012, and White House Down. The two eventually reunited for Independence Day Resurgence in 2016, which we'll touch on in a little bit. When the directors pitched Independence Day, it triggered one of the most intense bidding wars in Hollywood history, occurring over a legendary 24-hour period. Emmerich and Devlin sent the script to studios on a Thursday, and Fox executive Peter Chernin purchased it the following day. The film was locked into a strict July 3, 1996 release date. At the time of the deal, the production team had no cast, no models, and no storyboards, meaning the clock on 4th of July was already ticking. The visual spectacle of Independence Day was not merely an aesthetic choice. It was a pioneering technical achievement that redefined how disaster films were constructed. At a time when the industry was cautiously transitioning from practical techniques to computer-generated imagery, the production team executed a masterful hybrid approach that prioritized tangible physical detail over digital artifice. The synergy between the analog and the digital allowed for the film's most iconic sequences to feel grounded in a reality that audiences could instinctively grasp. The backbone of this process was the extensive use of miniature models, which were meticulously designed and constructed to achieve a level of realism impossible to recreate with the CGI at the time. To achieve the breathtaking destruction of landmarks like the White House, the production team constructed elaborate 1:12 scale models which were rigged with precise pyrotechnic charges. By filming these models from low angles with high-speed cameras, the filmmakers were able to capture the physics of debris and fire in a way that mimicked actual large-scale destruction. The merging of these practical techniques with CGI was where the true innovation occurred. Rather than attempting to render entire cities in a computer, which would have looked jarringly artificial by 1996 standards, the production utilized CGI primarily for atmospheric effects and compositing. Digital artists carefully layered digital fire, smoke, and debris, which they mapped onto the physical miniature sets, creating a seamless integration that fooled the eye. For example, during the massive aerial dogfights, live-action footage of the actors in cockpits was matted against backgrounds of miniature alien ships and digital particle effects, such as the alien shield energy waves. By using practical models as the canvas for the digital enhancements, the filmmakers avoided the uncanny valley of early CGI, resulting in a visceral, tangible weight to the destruction that became the hallmark of the film and set an enduring, high standard for the entire action genre. Structurally, Independence Day is not just a sci-fi action film. It's a direct stylistic descendant of the 1970s disaster epic, pioneered by producers like Irwin Allen, the man behind genre staples such as The Towering Inferno and The Poseidon Adventure. These films relied on a rigid, highly effective three-act structure that Emmerich and Devlin masterfully adopted. Day one focuses on the creeping global sense of dread as we are introduced to the characters, while the shadow of the alien vessels affects ordinary people across various iconic landscapes. Day two depicts the singular combined attack, a chaotic event where the world is shattered and communication networks fail, forcing the narrative from stability to survival. Day three follows the classic survival ensemble trope, where individuals from varied backgrounds must band together in a desperate, final stand to overcome the cataclysmic event. To make this massive global scale feel personal, the script leans heavily on the comforting, reliable archetypes established in 70s disaster cinema. These archetypes are essential because they provide the audience with a familiar shorthand, allowing the viewers to immediately understand a character's role, motivations, and moral compass, without requiring a long exposition. President Thomas Whitmore fills the archetype of the fearless, yet initially doubted leader. He starts out the movie initially worried about his polling numbers, before rising to the occasion and delivering a unifying, historic speech that rallies humanity. David Levinson embodies the voice of reason, or overlooked expert, whose quirky, niche knowledge proves to be the literal key to dismantling the invaders' defense systems. And of course, Captain Stephen Hiller represents the quintessential everyday hero, a charismatic, confident pilot who acts as the tip of the spear for the human counterattack, providing the boots-on-the-ground perspective that turns a massive, overwhelming war into a relatable human triumph. By utilizing these established archetypes, the film creates a familiar emotional framework that allows the audience to anchor themselves in the story, even as the scale of the destruction expands to a global level. Independence Day didn't just change summer blockbuster special effects, it also fundamentally rewrote the playbook for how movies are sold. In the summer of '96, the internet was still in its infancy, yet the team behind Independence Day leaned into the digital space with a level of ambition that paved the way for modern marketing. They launched one of the first major multi-platform digital marketing campaigns, utilizing tools that were, for many, entirely new. Fox didn't just dump a trailer on TV, they created an interactive experience, releasing a special CD-ROM, a digital dossier packed with production insights, and interactive alien lore that felt like a secret transmission from the film's universe. They also aired a half-hour television special on the Fox network, the first third of which was a spoof news report depicting the alien attack as real-time unfolding news, tapping into the same War of the Worlds dread that had panicked radio listeners decades prior. This was the blueprint for everything that followed. It showed Hollywood that the internet was the ultimate hype machine. By the time The Lost World Jurassic Park arrived in 1997, with its intricate in-universe corporate website, and The Matrix in 1999 launched its cryptic, viral, heavy web presence, they were simply following the trail blazed by the alien shadow of '96. Those of us that were there remember waiting 20 minutes for a dial-up connection to load a pixelated postage stamp-sized QuickTime clip of the Empire State Building being decimated. It was the moment we realized the movie screen was no longer the only place where the story lived. Looking back at Independence Day through the lens of my own work on Retropocalypse, I realized that my relationship with this film is more than just analytical. It's anchored in my own formative years. I graduated in 1996, and Independence Day is a defining core memory of my youth. I still remember the months of obsessive anticipation, poring over every magazine article, hunting for early digital previews, and dissecting every commercial I could find. When opening day finally arrived, walking into that theater with my friends felt like the culmination of the entire decade's hype. For a lifelong Star Wars fan like me, this film provided a unique kind of closure too. I had always carried a quiet regret that I was too young to experience the original Star Wars trilogy for the first time in a packed theater during that initial 1977 run. Independence Day finally gave me that feeling. It was a massive communal event where the energy in the room was electric. That feeling of pure, unbridled patriotism during President Whitmore's speech didn't just feel American. It felt fundamentally human. It was a rare, fleeting moment where the entire audience, regardless of background, was moved by the same message of collective resolve against an existential threat. There was something profoundly moving about watching the climax, where the film strips away the noise and shows the world finally choosing to stand as one. Watching humanity set aside its borders, its conflicts, and its petty differences to unite in that desperate, coordinated counterattack was nothing short of exhilarating. It captured a sense of absolute infectious hope. In that moment of cinematic triumph, you weren't just watching a battle, you were feeling the weight of a world that had collectively decided that survival wasn't a question of us versus them, but a matter of human existence. One character I haven't really mentioned so far is Randy Quaid's Russell Casse. That's because this character is one where my perspective now is much different than back in '96. As a kid, I saw Russell as comic relief, but as I have grown older and have had a family of my own, I see the character as one of the most in-depth, real characters of any movie. This is a haunted man, struggling to survive despite the massive amount of PTSD and trauma as a result of a military past. He finds the internal strength to come through at a crucial moment, not for humanity, not for his country, but for his kids. And in that one heroic act, demonstrates what it means to truly be a parent. His kids see him for the man he was, not the shell of a man he became after life chewed him up and spat him out. The best stories are reflections of our own experiences. I will likely never know what it is to be the leader of an entire country, but I do know what it is to be a father who, despite all the challenges in the world, is willing to do what it takes for my family. Independence Day remains, in my mind, the most perfect expression of that universal spirit, and the reason why that summer in 1996 still holds a powerful place in my memory. Released 20 years after the original, Independence Day Resurgence in 2016 arrived with immense expectations, aiming to expand upon the lore of its predecessor. However, the film ultimately struggled to recapture the original's lightning-in-a-bottle magic. It suffered from a convoluted narrative and lacked the earnest, heart-centered sincerity that grounded the 1996 blockbuster. While the film's climax shifted towards a giant monster city-smashing spectacle, a nod to Emmerich's own penchant for the genre, reminiscent of his Godzilla era, it faced significant criticism, feeling less like a natural narrative progression and more like a standard modern CGI-heavy blockbuster that favored scale over character development. And it's unfortunate, because the cliffhanger opened the door to expanding the story well beyond Earth's orbit. Despite these narrative hurdles, the sequel provided a fascinating look at a world radically altered by the events of 1996. The film's most compelling conceptual contribution was the depiction of humanity's rapid technological trajectory. In the wake of the invasion, the nations of the world formed the Earth Space Defense, a global initiative dedicated to retro-engineering the scavenged alien hardware. Over 2 decades, this forced cooperation triggered a period of unprecedented innovation. Humanity moved from standard jet propulsion to anti-gravity flight, integrated sophisticated alien-derived laser weaponry, and successfully established a permanent, fortified human colony. In the 3 decades since its release, Independence Day has cemented its status as the definitive blueprint for the modern summer blockbuster. It didn't just break box office records, it fundamentally changed the DNA of the action disaster genre by successfully blending high-stakes, large-scale destruction with a uniquely optimistic, ensemble-driven narrative. Beyond its technical contributions, the film's lasting power lies in its vision of a global unity, a promise that no matter how dark the sky becomes or how impossible the odds seem, we have the capacity to look up, lock arms, and fight back. For generations of moviegoers, it remains an enduring example of how grand spectacle, when anchored by relatable archetypes and genuine heart, can make the entire planet feel like a single neighborhood, united by a shared, defiant hope. As we close this chapter of Retropocalypse, we look back at a production that was as lightning fast as the invasion itself. We trace the signal from that legendary 24-hour bidding war that set the clock ticking, through the workshops where massive miniature models were rigged to explode with visceral reality, and into the early digital frontier, where viral marketing first learned to weaponize the internet's hype. From the practical craftsmanship of Emmerich and Devlin to its cultural shockwaves felt in theaters across the globe in 1996, our journey today has shown that while technology evolves, the core of a great story remains unchanged. But, like all good stories from the past, it's up to us to keep them alive. Whether you're a lifelong fan who remembers the hum and click of a VHS tape, or a newcomer just discovering why that iconic speech still gives you chills, the message remains the same. We aren't going down without a fight. Thank you for joining me on this deep dive into the archives. I'm Chris, and this is Retropocalypse, where the past isn't dead. It's just waiting to be discovered by the next generation. See you next time.